Biden agreed to pass an executive order which would forgive up to $10,000 in loans for most borrowers. If you had a Pell Grant, it would forgive you about $20,000 in student loans. And this is for undergraduate. From what I've read also, it caps you at 125,000. That if you're making 125,000 or more as a single person, you don't qualify for this. And the same applies to couples who make a combined 250K. They would not be eligible for this forgiveness package. Also, he's issued a 5% cap of income, which means that your student loan payments at a minimum cannot be more than 5% of your income. So you can't be paying more than 5% of your income, which I think definitely helps out people. And if you dig further into the numbers, these are all estimates, but I read that this executive order would wipe out 33% of debt for loan holders. So 33% of their debt would be wiped out completely, these loan holders. So 33% just don't have to pay any loans after this gets passed through. And for the rest of the people who have student loans, which is 43 million, half of them, half of their loans would be wiped out. So it lessens their load and paying back this loan. So how do I think this is going to impact the Biden voters? Well, just the election. Before I get into that, I also want to mention, from what I've been hearing, is that this package will only be around for a few years. So if you're in college right now and you graduate in a few years, it won't apply to you. So I look at this as just a band-aid to the overall problem of student loans in this country. Grant, I'll say it's a nice band-aid. It's a nice consolation for a lot of people, but it doesn't solve the problem going forward with how bad student loans are. Just there's a great need for great reform about the student loan system. I believe college should be free for everybody who goes in there. I definitely believe that, just because it's still a necessity for a lot of people just to get a job. Even jobs that pay you low wages these days won't hire you if you don't have a college degree. So it's kind of necessary for a lot of people, and they shouldn't have to suffer with just ridiculous debts. I know some people will argue with me, saying like, well, back in my day, I paid it off. Well, it depends on how old you are. Just if you're in your 60s, you got to go to college when like college was like $100 a semester or some shit like that, when it was really cheap. So like your story's not really inspirational hard work. Back then, you could just work at McDonald's during the summertime and pay it off, and you could just get on with your life and start a family and do whatever you wanted to do. And housing was a lot cheaper, even when we adjusted numbers for inflation. So I don't really take that seriously when people give these speeches about how they paid off their loan. If they're just above a certain age, I just can't take it seriously, because you came from a different era. Now, if you're fairly young, if you're still in your 30s or if you're in your 40s and you're able to pay it off, well, kudos to you. I respect that. I'll give you guys credit for finding a way to get rid of it. But I still feel it's a hold on a majority of people. And I say this as someone whose loans was covered by my parents. I was fortunate. They were able to pay for my undergrad. I'm very thankful for that, because I would have gone to college otherwise. But I definitely think it's a load on a bunch of people. It's a terrible chain that I feel is wrapped around a lot of people's necks, and it just stops them from doing great things in life. Just it limits their potential. It limits their ability to take risks. It limits their ability to have the necessities, like start a family, have kids, just be truly feel like a grown-up adult, instead of having to live with their parents and still just feel like they're a kid even though they're grown up. So I just think it does a lot of delayed development. It's a terrible thing. I know a lot of people will scream and yell like, well, they should have known better when they decided to sign up for the student loans. I'm like thinking like, well, when you're that age, you don't have awareness. If we're being honest, you just don't. You don't have awareness. That's the way I look at it. Most people just don't know their consequence at that age. And if we're being honest, most people's brains don't fully develop until they're 26. So your decision making is not great at that age. Hence why college preys on young kids coming out of high school. It's a predatory industry. That's the way I look at it, to be honest. So I definitely think college should be free. Obviously, that's a long shot for whoever passed reform for that. But realistically, we should pass student loan reform that makes these loans less predatory and less in an amount that you owe. I think college tuition rates have to go down. There has to be a way that the government can work to do that. So I definitely feel like that. I know people will scream and yell like no one should be owed anything, blah blah, but it's not true. The U.S. government has a history of helping out certain groups of people, giving them great economic packages, stimulus boosts, and whatnot, and which allow them to go ahead in life. There's just too many examples just of that throughout history. So I just don't believe in this. People crying about free handouts. The USA has a history of doing that. For being real here, that's the way I look at it from that perspective in that regard. But when it comes to just how it's going to impact the elections, I think it could be negative for Joe Biden, or it could be positive. You just don't know. Maybe all these young people will come out to support him in the midterms, but it's highly unlikely since young people just have never cared about midterms. He could lose them. I look at it from that perspective, that so that could be the case. But maybe it does give him a boost and people come out for him, especially if he promises these young kids that if they vote in the midterms, he'll do whatever it takes to continue to fight for them to get student loan forgiveness, and maybe even hold that carrot high for 2024, where he'll tell them like, hey, if you reelect me after 2024, I'll increase the forgiveness number to even a higher amount. So I think that could be pretty big in that regard. But I also think it could work against him. There are a lot of people in America that are uneducated when it comes to college. They didn't go to college, or if they did, it was very brief. So they're anti-college and they're angry about it. I know this, for example, my younger brother, he's only high school educated, and he was against this. He told me it was stupid, and he wasn't supportive of this. He's also told me on many occasions he's anti-free college. He doesn't think that people deserve it. So I can definitely see how it could alienate that voting bloc, and they could show up in high numbers. So it could really could be a mix. But one thing I'll give Biden, and I'm not a Democrat or Republican, so one thing I'll give Biden is that he's trying to pull out all the stops right now to give his party a chance in 2024. Well, not 2024, 2022, and even giving himself a shot a few years down the line for a re-election. This guy looked like he was just a zombie just a few months earlier. Seems like he's been on a run these last few months with everything he's been doing. I think the abortion ban just gave him life and energy. So he's taking advantage of it. It'll be interesting to see how this turns out. I'm not rooting for either side, but I always think politics is entertaining in the sense that you see a bunch of strategies of both parties, and just to see which one wins out will be very, very interesting. Still, a lot could happen in the next few months, but you have to give Biden credit. He's pulling out all the stops right now. That's the way I look at it, but I don't really have anything else to say about this.